This is U.S. History Unit 2, Video 1, and in this unit we're going to be looking at the causes of the American Revolution and also the Revolution itself. We'll look at the background first here to set the stage. The competition for land in North America was becoming a huge problem between the French and the English, as each of these two countries spread throughout the Great Lakes regions in what is today Ohio and Pennsylvania. Disputes over these land claims only grew worse. A resulting 9-year war happens, and North America sees the French and British tear each other apart in what is known as the French and Indian War. England's going to win this war, so they're going to be the ones that name it, and they name it who they fought, the French, and largely the Indians are going to ally themselves with the French. The British victory gives England huge amounts of territory in the New World, but because of this huge amounts of territory, it's also going to come with massive debts, and that's going to be a continuing theme throughout this entire unit. The treaty that ends the French and Indian War is called the Treaty of Paris of 1763, and there's not a ton of dates that you need to remember for this course, but this is one, 1763, and you'll see why at the end of the unit when we talk about the Treaty of Paris of 1783. So there's another Treaty of Paris in this very same unit, so we have to make sure that we know the date for this one. With the British victory in this war, they're going to gain all of the lands east of the Mississippi River, with the small exception of New Orleans, which will play a little bit of a role in the next unit. They're also going to get all of France's holdings in Canada, which is an enormous amount of land. The Treaty of Paris of 1763 was signed, giving this new territory over to Britain, as well as officially ending the French and Indian War. A lot of the colonists who fought for Britain against the French in this war are going to be some that fight against the British in the American Revolution. And again, we'll see that in this unit. George Washington is one of probably the most famous. But again, wars are expensive, and this 9-year war put huge strains on the tax revenues for Great Britain. And also, Native Americans not invited to the treaty discussions in 1763. That will be a theme that we'll see throughout this course as well. So your first question there that you have to fill out asks you, how did the French and Indian War, which ended with the Treaty of Paris of 1763, cause problems between the colonies and Britain? There's going to be a couple of things here. The main thing you need to understand here is that it's going to put a huge burden on the revenues of Great Britain, thus causing Great Britain to raise revenues the only way that governments do, and that's through taxes. So how did this cause problems between the colonies and Britain? It causes an economic problem in that Britain is going to start taxing the colonies. Remember salutary neglect that we talked about in Unit 1? That's all about to come crashing down. Here's a map that shows Great Britain and France before the French and Indian War, and you can see France has massive lands here in the New World. After the French and Indian War, though, Great Britain gains all of this land east of the Mississippi as well as Canada. So vast amounts of land here that Great Britain's going to start controlling. What land was gained by the British in the Treaty of Paris of 1763? Another question that you have there. And it's going to be all of the lands east of the Mississippi. All of France's lands east of the Mississippi, as well as Canada. So, two huge tracts of land there. The Proclamation of 1763, the same exact year that the Treaty of Paris, the first Treaty of Paris, is signed. With new territory west of the Appalachian Mountains, many colonists started flooding that area to acquire more land. The desire for land drives most migration throughout, especially the first semester of this class. Native Americans, though, were less than pleased about this new migration, so Indian attacks against British colonies and British troops increased across the Appalachian Mountains. So, to prevent this violence, Parliament and the King are going to pass what is known as the Proclamation of 1763. This prevented colonists from settling west of the Appalachian Mountains. Now, most colonists just ignored the law and settled in this land anyway, but they were still very upset with this law that the king had passed. They believed that they had fought for this land along with the British troops, and so it should be theirs to settle as they saw fit. In many colonists' mind, this was a war over land, and if they couldn't get the land that they fought for, then there was going to be major problems here. You can see here the Proclamation Line of 1763. It runs roughly along the Appalachian Mountains. So all of this land was now officially Britain's because of the Treaty of Paris of 1763. However, the Proclamation Line would not allow the colonists to move past that. So it's going to anger a lot of the colonists. And you're going to see this anger build up over time with several things that we discuss. One of those things that are going to anger the colonists is the Stamp Act. To boost its income, and we've talked about the money that has been lost due to the French Indian War, the tax revenues that are now pretty depleted, Parliament institutes a number of taxes. Many revolved around taxes on imported goods, which are called tariffs. With many colonists smuggling those goods instead, though, Parliament created the Stamp Act in 1765. This was a different tax because it was a direct tax on the colonists, an internal tax. It wasn't on imported goods or tariffs, it was on something that the colonists would buy. It required all printed documents and materials, any kind of paper documents, anything, to have a stamp placed on it, which showed that the tax had been paid. This could be newspapers, lawyer's license, college degrees, playing cards, anything that was printed had to have this stamp, which was essentially a tax. The reaction in the colonies was violent at times. Colonists beat tax collectors, burned down their homes, threw bricks through their windows, tarred and feathered them any way possible they could find to not buy the stamps. They set entire pallets of stamps on fire in a way of protest. Here you can see Stamp Master in Effigy, and so Effigy just means a likeness. It's kind of like a scarecrow, so they would dress up a scarecrow to look like the stamp collector there, the Stamp Master, and they put him on the stick and threw things at him. You can see, and then here is a picture of one of the stamps that would be on the paper during the Stamp Act. So how did the colonists feel about the Proclamation Line of 1763? This is one of your questions, and then it also asks how did they respond. So the colonists absolutely hated the Proclamation Line of 1763. They felt like they had fought for this land, it was theirs to keep, and so they responded by largely ignoring the law. They really didn't pay much attention to it, and it was quite difficult to enforce from the British standpoint. So you're going to have conflict with Native Americans across the Appalachians, which is what the king was trying to prevent in the first place. The other question asks you, what were some of the responses to the Stamp Act? Again, we talked about burning stamps, beating tax collectors, tarring and feathering tax collectors, burning them or hanging them in effigy. General lawlessness, really. The colonists were fighting against the Stamp Act. So that's the video.